Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the 2022 Senate election in the state of Nevada, and why I think it is the most competitive Senate race that we're going to see this November. And so before we get started with this video, please like this video if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and share it with a friend if you think that friend would enjoy seeing it. So yeah, we're just going to hop right into this video, no super special announcements to begin. And we're going to be taking a look at the 2020 election map in Nevada and playing around with it using this cool tool called the election shuffler, which essentially allows you to manipulate totals by county, which is really good for making forecasts because, you know, you can see I have an idea of how this county is going to vote, and we're going to see how it's going to affect the statewide results. So what we're going to do then, we're also use some exit polls to make a judgment about this race. But yeah, so just for some, I guess, background information on this race and just some context, I guess. This is a Senate race, obviously, in Nevada. The incumbent here is Democrat Catherine Cortez Masto, who in 2016 won this election with just 47% of the vote. She only won one county, which was Clark County down here. Notably, she lost Washoe County, which was the county that did vote for Joe Biden. And Washoe has trended to the left in recent years, so it's not stunning that she lost it in 2016, but it's still interesting to note, and we'll certainly factor it in 2022. But yeah, she beat Joe Heck, who was the congressman from, I believe, the 4th District at the time, and he did not run an amazing campaign. It wasn't atrocious like we saw some other campaigns that cycle, but it wasn't amazing from Heck, and I think he could have won had he done a better job of building the Hispanic voters. But the point being, Cortez Masto did end up winning this race. She won by about 2.5%, or about 2.4%, where she basically matched the total that Clinton got in the state, and so this was a pretty good election result for Democrats, especially in a year that wasn't great for them overall, or they at least underperformed expectations. And so, yeah. Now, just to take a look at this race, as you can see right here, the turnout that we got from Cortez Masto here was she won this race with about 521,000 votes, so just over 500,000. And in 2020, what we saw in Nevada was that if we pull up this race, Biden got a very different coalition with very different turnout numbers. So Biden won Nevada with 700,000 votes, which is the highest vote total we've ever seen in Nevada get. Now, I know that doesn't mean a ton because we saw that for a lot of races in 2020 because of how high the turnout was. But I really mean that because Nevada certainly was very important to both these campaigns, especially for Biden because it was a key part of his coalition that he needed to hold. And so he won this with very high turnout, and he did very well, especially in Washoe County. He didn't do amazing in Clark County. Clark County, he only won it by about 9%, so it wasn't perfect per se, but it still was a solid showing, and he did enough to win the state. Like, he didn't do horrendous, but he did just enough to have a showing in Nevada that replicated what Hillary Clinton did 4 years prior. And that was basically all Biden was going for. To be completely honest, I think that he thought that he had Nevada in the bag before Election Day. It was probably closer than he envisioned. Most people close to the Biden campaign, I think I read a report that he was expected to win it by at least 5, maybe getting into the high single digits there. But I think that was wishful thinking. I actually never moved it down from lean Democratic. I always had it as lean Democratic. I know there were a lot of forecasts that has likely to even save Democratic, but I was pretty big on the whole Nevada's going to be pretty close in 2020 train because Biden was going to do better than Clinton, and Washoe was going to do better than her in a lot of the Vegas suburbs, but he was going to fall with urban Hispanics. And so those trends mostly came true. I'm pretty proud of my Nevada prediction. I think my margins were pretty good there. But the main reason I'm bringing that up is because Hillary Clinton in Nevada and Joe Biden both won the state by about 2.4%. And Cortez Masto would love to have that coalition because unlike Biden and Clinton, she'll probably be running in a year where Republicans actually win the popular vote. In 2016, it wasn't a great year for Democrats. A lot of Democrats look back at 2016 with, not great memories. But in the big picture, they still won the popular vote by 2%, or at least Clinton did. And Biden won the popular vote by 4.4%. And so 2022 is going to be a year where Republicans are going to win the popular vote. And all likelihood, I'd be very, very surprised if Democrats find a way to come out and win the popular vote. It's not likely, especially when you factor in the fact that even the polling that we've seen has had the GOP up by 2, and polling isn't great, but it tends to underestimate Republicans when it does miss, which is often. And so I'm expecting an environment that's a bit more favorable to the GOP than the polls are projecting right now. And they've had that GOP plus 2 for a few months, and I think it'll be GOP plus 4, GOP plus 5. But yeah, so all this to say is that, Biden's performance in Nevada wasn't great. He could have done a lot better if he'd actually campaigned there, but Cortez Masto would love to have that coalition. She'd love to win by 2%. She'd love to win it all, because this is a tough race, and like I said, it's the most competitive race of the cycle in my eyes. And so we're going to look at, first, the trends that favor her in the state and the trends that do not favor her. So just to take a look at the 2020 Nevada exit polls, just so we can get a better idea of how this electorate looked when they showed up to the polls on Election Day, Biden in 2020, he won Nevada with just over 50% of the vote, I believe. Yeah, he got just over 50% of the vote. And so when he did this, he won 54% of females, who had the majority of the electorate, and lost males by about 5%. So he did twice as well with males as Trump did twice as well with females as Trump did with males. And so that was kind of the margin there. But the interesting thing is that when we break this down with race, as I like to do, is that we see that Biden won Hispanics by 26%, but that lagged behind his total nationwide. Trump got about 35% of the vote with Hispanics in Nevada. That's about 3% better than he did nationwide. So Hispanics in Nevada were a bit more favorable to Trump than they were overall, but it's not too surprising. And so to take a look at 2018, which was the last time the Democrats won a Nevada Senate race, they did better with Hispanics. So if we take a look at race here, Hispanics backed the Democrats by 37% in 2018. In 2020, they backed them by 26%. And so I think we've all heard about the trend that happened in 2020. Obviously a lot of trends, but the one that favored Trump for the most part was Hispanics. Hispanics in most states trended towards the Republican Party, and they delivered some big victories for Trump in states like Texas and Florida. And so as a result of that, we're kind of getting, the notion that Hispanics are indefinitely trending Republican, which they might be, but I'm going to kind of not disagree with that, but I want to offer a counter argument, which is Nevada was ground zero for this happening, and it didn't even happen that much. Now, I know that Nevada is a state that doesn't really swing a ton, which in and of itself is good for Democrats in 2022, because if Nevada doesn't swing that much, it'll stay blue. But Nevada doesn't swing a ton. We don't see crazy changes the way we saw them in Texas or in Florida or in a state like Arizona or Georgia, and in both directions really. And so Nevada was a state that Biden did not really campaign in. As I mentioned earlier, he thought he had it in the bag. Trump made a play for it, but I think that Trump was counting on losing it. He would have liked to have had it, obviously. He probably thought he had a chance heading into Election Day if things went well for him. But Trump did not, I think, did not really expect to win Nevada. It was a state that I think he was counting on narrowly losing. And, that's what happened, right? And so when both of them kind of pulled out from the state, a few weeks before Election Day. Now, I know Trump still technically went to Nevada, and, he still ran some ads there, but let's be real, he was more focused on holding Florida and Georgia and Arizona and trying to hold on to one of the Rust Belt states. But Nevada was kind of lower on the list of priorities for Trump anyways, and Biden, like I said, thought he had it locked up. But the point being, Nevada was a state that, in retrospect, now I know it's easy to say that, but in retrospect, it should have been the state that really trended against Democrats in 2020 the same way Florida did, because the COVID lockdowns that were mostly enforced by Democrats hit Las Vegas really hard, and by really hard I mean I think you can make an argument that Las Vegas was the city hit the hardest by COVID lockdowns, just because of its reliance on gambling and tourism and that creating jobs for working class voters here. And Biden did not do that well in the Nevada primary. Now, I know that he got second place, which is better than Iowa and New Hampshire, but he still, in Clark County, did not do well compared to Sanders. Sanders did really well with urban voters. Not only urban Hispanics, but he did really well with urban white voters, urban black voters, urban voters without college degrees of all races in that primary. And so they came out for Sanders, and sure, a lot of them came out for Biden in November, but not all of them did, and I think Sanders would have done better in Clark County specifically. In Nevada, if he'd been the Democratic nominee. Not to relitigate that, but just to say, hey, Biden did not do well here in the primary, and he did not do well here in the 2020 election. And so, as a result of that, he only won Nevada by 2% when he expected to win it by more. But in reality, the fact that the lockdowns in Vegas took away a lot of jobs and sent them elsewhere, and the fact that Hispanics did not really like Biden shows that this state could have easily been a disaster for Democrats. They could have lost a House seat here, they could have lost the state at the presidential level and caused even more panic. And I think that if the Democrats did lose this state, if it was a state that Trump narrowly won by half a point, we'd be having a very different conversation right now for Cortez Masto. But that's not what happened, because Biden ended up winning it by 2.4%. And it makes me think that, this election is not only competitive, but it's also really interesting because it'll tell us whether the Hispanic shift can be negated in some places. Because, look, if there's a place where Democrats give a little hope to themselves with Hispanics, it's going to be Nevada. Because Cortez Masto did real well with Hispanics in 2016. She is herself Hispanic. She knows how to win these campaigns. She knows how to run these campaigns. And she knows, I think, how to appeal to these voters better than Joe Biden. Because let's be honest, Joe Biden's campaign with Hispanic voters was cringeworthy. We all saw in 2020 that clip of him dancing to Despacito at I think a rally in Florida, which was embarrassing for him. Let's be honest. But the point being, Biden's campaign with Hispanics was very bad. His outreach program was atrocious. He didn't know how to communicate well. He didn't know how to get them out to vote, and that's why a lot of Hispanics either switched to Trump or stayed home in 2020. Despite the fact that Biden did better with a lot of other voters, like suburban voters, white voters, and black voters, Hispanic voters were not. They bucked the trend, and so in Nevada, Cortez Masto has a chance to make up for that. Like, if she can prove to me and a lot of other, people, right, that she can win here in an environment that's not favorable because of her outreach to Hispanics, I think that will show that there is a path for Democrats with Hispanics. It won't be easy, but it will be a path forward, right? And that's why I think Cortez Masto can hold on to this race, or to hold on to this seat, because it's so inelastic. It is so, Nevada does not swing a ton, right? It's inelastic, as I said, but it's also so stubborn with the way that these coalitions change. Because for the Republicans to win this race, they will need to drastically alter the coalitions of Nevada. They'll need to win back suburban voters, and they'll need to do that while continuing their gains with Hispanics. And I think that Laxalt, because he's willing to be the Republican nominee, can do all right with suburban voters. He won't do bad. I'm not saying that, but I don't think that he'll be able to revert Henderson or revert Paradise or revert Enterprise or North Las Vegas back to what they were in 2016 or 2014. Because if that happened, you'd also be counting on urban Hispanics in the city of Las Vegas itself swing back to Democrats, because it's a realignment, right? It's a kind of a trade-off, and in some states the trade-off benefits Democrats, in other states benefits Republicans. But in Nevada, it's kind of been a mix of both, which is why, despite the fact that Clinton and Biden did differently in different counties, they still won by nearly identical margins. So Cortez Masto, like I said, I think she's very narrowly favored, but it's quite literally a coin flip. And so for that reason, I just want to fill out this map here real quick. So just to talk about these rural areas, I'm just going to multi-select because I don't want to do all these counties individually. I've got these counties up here that are all dark red, and I'm not labeling Nye County. This is Nye County because rural Nevada is still pretty Hispanic, but Nye County itself is quite Hispanic in itself, and it's more Hispanic than these counties. And so I don't think there'll be much of a trend in either of these counties. Like, they might narrowly trend towards Democrats because Cortez Masto will not be as repulsive to these voters as Joe Biden was. Like, I'm not saying that she'll win these counties, obviously, like she did in 2010, but she's not gonna keep these to swing even more to the right. So for that reason, I'll say that they trend D by about 3%. Give them that shift. Shift selected counties. I'm also going to multi-select them and decrease the turnout because relative to the state, rural counties will be a little bit slower. But yeah, let's just can I decrease turnout here? Let's see. Turnout. Okay, I have to do it individually, but let's just say turnout here decreases by 7% a law because it's a small county. But let's just say it decreases by about 5%, 6% in these counties, right? And so if these turnouts decrease in all these counties, we're getting slowly but surely, chipping away at these Republican gains. And so will this loosen the race? No, it'll have a very minimal effect, but I do want to kind of stimulate this race to the best of my abilities. But the point being, turnout in these areas isn't going to be great for the GOP. And so as a result of that, that's why I think Cortez Masto has a fighting chance. Nye County is going to have a bit lower turnout draw because it's so Hispanic, but Cortez Masto might gain a little bit because Biden did so badly with rural Hispanics anyways. Esmeralda is also be really bad, but Esmeralda is tiny. It's a county of 800 people. It's tiny. And so that's rural Nevada. Then you've got kind of exurban Carson City, which isn't even it's mostly rural, but I don't think it's too much of a turnout. Nothing's going to change here, I don't think. Carson City itself is going to be interesting because Dean Heller will be on the ballot. He's from Carson City, and he did really well in Carson City in 2018. It was a county that he ended up winning. If I can pull up the 2018 Nevada. I can't right now, but point being, actually, I can't. Never mind. Let me do Nevada. The point being, Dean Heller will be on the ballot, meaning the Republicans will get a boost from Carson City because he's from Carson City and he did really well in Carson City. Like, he won Carson City County by 13% in a year that was really good for Democrats and where he lost the race. And he did better than Trump in Carson City County, which is not something you usually see. But anyways, Carson City, I don't really know how it'll trend. It'll probably stay the same. It might get a little more Republican, but like, let's just say turnout increases and it gets slightly more Republican here. And then Washoe County is the big one. I do think it'll get a little more Republican because, again, of that Carson City boost that Dean Heller is going to give the GOP, and also Laxalt didn't do well in Washoe in 2018, but I think Paul Laxalt, his father, was from Washoe County, and he had a history of winning it. And Laxalt won it before, just in 2014 and 2010. And so, because of that little boost he'll get there, I think it'll kind of narrowly, I guess, tint this a little more towards Republicans, but at the same time, right, like, it's going to be really slim because of how inelastic the state is overall. But anyways, the total here is basically the same thing for Democrats. You know, my projection has gone doing a little better, but I actually got to adjust the turnout from Clark right here. Let me just decrease turnout by, like, let's do 5%. And Wash is going to increase turnout, so that's important. So you got that, and then this is tough. Clark I'll say gets a little more Republican, but not like by too much right here. Like, it'll get maybe half point more Republican at max, and I say that mostly because the GOP in Clark County are gonna have to really rally in the suburbs and keep going with Hispanics, which isn't likely they do both those things enough in 2020 to make the county make a significant dent in the county. But it'll, and any dent's good for them because of how big the county is, because it makes up like 80% of the state's population or something like that. But the point is, the final total here is that Cortez Masto would only win by about 7,000 votes. It would be very close, and it would be only a 0.5% margin victory, meaning that it's really anyone's race. But that's the broad picture that I'm trying to paint here. You can disagree. And like if you're going to say, I disagree, I think the Republicans are going to win by like 0.1%, sure, I don't care. It's like you're arguing with me about a 0.6% gap. I respect people who think this race is going both to Republican and to Democrat. But if you say it's safe for one party, then I think this separate conversation needs to be held. But the point is, I got the Democrats narrowly winning here. It's going to be really close, but it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. So, hope you enjoyed that video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day.